Very recently, I read a very moving letter sent out by Dr. Piotr Chavinsky, who is the director at the Auschwitz Memorial. I'm not sure if you saw this, and he basically sent
Mm.
out a letter to the president of Nigeria in regards to a 13-year-old Nigerian boy that had been arrested and sent to jail for 10 years due to blasphemy. And
Mm.
in this letter, Chavinsky basically said, "Look, I will pay, for for this young man's career. I will pay to educate him, and I'm also willing to serve his prison sentence to have him freed."
Wow.
So I wonder why in the West, in the freest society on earth, do we spend all this time? I mean, it seems paradoxical that in the West we do this when in other societies it doesn't seem like they do.
And you're right. By the way, I mean, it is what we're talking about so far has been particularly English-speaking people's phenomenon. I mean, it's a tendency of the developed modern English-speaking world. There is a lot of it in Spanish-speaking countries, French-speaking countries, and elsewhere, but there's a little bit less tolerance for it, in my own experience. And when we were all able to travel a lot, I that was my estimation, as well as from following all the press and the media and the politics in the various countries. My own view is that it's a what we're talking about is a product of many things. Some people might give the spin on it that it's a product of a kind of decadence. Um, there's something in that. I think it's something else. I think there is, to a great extent, a type of boredom. People want grand schemes to involve themselves in. They would like to. This is one of the reasons we're obsessed with heroic moments in history, and that's not all bad by any means. We're obsessed by heroic moments in history, in part because we wish we could be in them, and we always wish we could be in them as long as we're on the winning side and we know it's the winning side and we survive. But it's the same with civil rights movements. People would have liked to have been at the Stonewall Inn in 1968. They would have liked to have been with Martin Luther King and the March on Washington. They would have liked to have been with the first and second wave feminists. They would have loved being with the suffragettes. Uh, but all this happened before them, and they live in the wake of it, and they're very happy to live in the wake of it. But they resent the lack of meaning, because the meaning these movements gave people was very substantial. The social capital people accrued from being in them. This wasn't why everyone was in them by any means, but the social capital accrued from being in such a movement was very significant. And a lot of people would like that. They'd like the social capital. They'd like to be able to tell everyone else what to do from a position of perceived authority, moral authority. And it's quite hard to find. I mean, you give a good example there of somebody with some moral authority, but it's quite hard to find how to get moral authority in our age. All people who issued it having been debunked and disliked in turn. Uh, so there is something in that, the boredom of not having a major cause, and the question, the much bigger question, which I'm forever trying to get people onto, which is, what ought we to be doing? I say in the Madness of Crowds that I'm just terribly conscious of the opportunity costs of spending our brain power at this moment in history, when we have this untold potential. We can talk across continents, we can Zoom, we can house party, we can whatever you like, we can swap ideas and get to places. We could solve things. We could solve an awful lot of things, including things that people claim to be very interested in solving. And we could do that. So why are we spending so much time focusing on the difference between being genderqueer and being non-binary, or being told by idiots that we need to educate ourselves? Uh, why would this be happening? And I think there are quite a lot of reasons. And one is a gigantic loss of um, certainty by the adults in the room. There is a very deep sense. I wrote about this partly in Strange Death of Europe, my last book but one. There is a very strong sense in countries like Britain in particular, that um, that somehow a new story needs to emerge. You hear this in, you know, intelligent, educated people saying things like, I think that men have to step back, or I think white people need to speak less, and this sort of thing. And I hear that from quite serious places, or places that used to be serious. People used to be serious. And I think this is all a demonstration that the adults have been giving in, and they've been willing to hand the thing over to whoever wants to take it on. I mean, there have just been far too few people willing to say, stop that right now. We're not having that. We're not having men played against women. We're not having straight people and gay people played against each other. We're not going to have you playing black and white people against each other. Stop it right now, because we can tell you where it goes. We haven't had enough people doing that. Instead, we have these sort of weak, pathetic, elderly men in particular who decide to have an easy life, having done well so far in many cases, but have an easy life by giving in to whatever the latest, craziest demands are. You say we have unconscious bias, fine, we'll accept we do. Oh, and we'll roll it out across our corporations. You tell us that all white people are wicked from birth. Okay, I'll swallow that one too. Anything for a quiet life. You tell me that our societies that have more rights for women and gay people and all other minorities than any other societies in history are uniquely terrible and awful. Oh, sure, okay, we'll go along with it because it's a quiet life. And these are contemptible people, and they've been in charge and in positions of power in recent years, and they have totally failed at the task in hand, which is at least to inject some adulthood into an unbelievably juvenile discussion. By saying, for instance, what are you comparing us to? It's one of the things I suggest, as you know, at the end of the Madness of Crowds. Like, who are you comparing us to? When you say that our society is particularly racist, who are you comparing us to? Iran, Venezuela, Zimbabwe? Who have you got? Have you been to any of these places? Can you point to them on a map? Can you tell me anything outside of your incredibly narrow and doctrinaire frame of reference? And you don't hear that. You just hear people giving in all around.